talk about a topic that may be a bit boring, but it's a very important part of our daily lives. Let's talk about the power grid. It's been called one of the greatest feats of engineering ever achieved by mankind. But we saw recently how it can sometimes be no match for Mother Nature. A widespread cold air mass brought record low temperatures to more than a third of the country. And as the temperatures dropped, millions of people began to bump up their thermostats, switch on their electric blankets, and use space heaters in a scramble to stay warm. And all of this activity occurring at the same time caused the demand for power to quickly spike and outpace supply. Those in charge of controlling the movement of electricity across the grid saw a calamity in the making. It became apparent that the supply of power would not be able to keep up with surging demand. If left unchecked, a complete meltdown of the system would take place, and many millions of Americans would be without power, not just for hours, but for days. And the cost of any damage done to the power grid would come out of our pockets, all of our pockets. So they first called on consumers to reduce their demand, and when that failed to bring the system into proper balance, they called for controlled rolling blackouts for durations of 1 to 3 hours. In the wake of this event, the finger pointing began. Critics from every corner emerged to put their spin on what went wrong and who or what should be blamed. Some blamed fossil fuels and some blamed the lack of fossil fuels. Some blamed renewable power, some blamed the lack of renewable power. But here's the truth. Our South Dakota electric co-ops have always been in favor of an all-of-the-above strategy when it comes to the generation of electricity. And that's because supporters from both sides of the power supply divide are right to some degree. But moving to the extremes in either direction is not the most sensible solution. As this deep freeze clearly demonstrated, there's no getting around the fact that we need fossil fuels to provide baseload power, the kind of power that allows us access where we need it and when we need it. And while we depend on sources like coal and gas for baseload power, we need to make sure it's as clean as it can possibly be. Power generators like Basin Electric and others fully recognize this imperative, and they're constantly exploring new ways to reduce emissions and investing in advanced technology to protect our environment. And we also need renewable power to be part of the picture. It's important that we develop and deploy alternative forms of power generation. There is a place for renewable power at the table, but if we were to rely exclusively on intermittent sources of power like solar and wind, without an appropriate allotment of traditional fossil fuels, outages could become a part of our daily routines. Now that could change if scientists figure out a reliable and cost-effective way to store grid-scale electricity for future use, but until then, an all-of-the-above strategy makes the most sense. A strategy that acknowledges both the benefits and the drawbacks of all forms of power generation available to us. Be assured South Dakota's electric cooperatives are looking out for the best interests of our members, and we'll continue to take a sensible, practical, thoughtful, non-ideological approach to power generation. We'll continue to support those policies that take into account cost, safety, reliability, and accessibility. The process of generating and transmitting power can be extremely complex, but our commitment to our members is very simple. We favor a path that protects the environment and also protects us all from frequent and prolonged service interruptions and high electric bills. We consider it a privilege to be your power provider, and we'll continue to work on your behalf to deliver the high quality of service you expect and you deserve. Let me invite you to check out the next edition of Cooperative Connections magazine, where we go into greater detail on this topic and others. Cooperative Connections magazine continues to be your source of the latest news and information from your electric cooperative.